In this video, I'm going to show you a strategy for developing a presentation that's really helpful once you already have a PowerPoint or a Google Slides presentation. So, as I've explained in my previous video, what I typically do to create a presentation is first I create just a summary of the project or what I'm supposed to be talking about, and then I use that summary to come up with my presentation in Google Slides or PowerPoint. And I also start from a template. So check out that video if you haven't already. And it's called Presentation Writing Process for Presentations, Part A. So this is Part B, and what I'm showing you today is how I go from a presentation outline to making sure that what I actually say in the presentation makes sense and aligns with the slides. And also this is a way to revise your slides to make sure that they match what you actually need to say in the presentation. But most importantly, this video is going to tell you how to get your timing right. So I'm going to show you how I do that. So at this point, let's assume that you already have an outline of your presentation, you have some slides here, but you haven't really figured out what your speaker notes are and you haven't figured out the timing. So you kind of have some visuals here that you plan to use, but you don't know what you're going to say. Okay, so at that point, what I do is I actually close the presentation in general because at this point it's not going to be super helpful for me. Because for me, if I stick with the presentation and just try to revise it, it's hard for me to really improve it because I'm just trying to work within an existing template. So sometimes you need to step away from what you've created and think about it from a distance. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going back to the summary that I have. In the case of an academic presentation, this might be your conference proposal or your abstract. So this is the abstract that will be in the program at the conference that I'm presenting at. And what I do is I look at that and I reread it. And then in my notebook or note on my computer, I basically think about the timing. So, okay, creativity has been a topic of interest to writing centers for some time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of mark for myself like what part of the presentation is this, right? Because I know I'm going to have like 3 overall parts. I'll probably have an introduction, I'll have the body, and I'll have the conclusion and or Q&A depending on the presentation. In the presentation I'm doing, I will have a Q&A, but depending on what you're doing, you might not have that. So I'm going to label these Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. Okay, so then what I think about is how much time I have. Actually, this might be helpful in a table. So let's see. So I'm just gonna go ahead and create a table here. See, I want to add more cells to it. I don't really know how to do this in, here we go, add row below. Okay, Part 2, body, and then Part 3, there we go. Okay, so the reason this is going to be helpful is because now on the middle column, I'm going to put I'm basically going to put like my timing, and I'm also going to write about the different things I need to do. So first I have to tell people that my topic is about creativity, and I need to introduce myself. So I'm going to write introduce myself, share topic. And then what I'm going to do is, why can't I just, okay. This is not working for me. Okay, never mind. Introduce, here. Share topic. I could re-record this video because clearly what I was about to do wasn't going to work for me because it won't let me I wanted to put like multiple things in one box, but I'm going to leave that in because I think it demonstrates that as you're figuring out how to organize your thoughts, you might have to experiment a little bit to see what kinds of structures will help you get your thoughts down. So I thought a table would help me get organized. And it probably would be visually better, but just technology-wise, I didn't want to deal with it. So I need to introduce myself, tell people my topic, which is creativity, And then I need to give an outline of the presentation. So I need to tell people what to expect. And I also want to give what's called the exigence, which means basically like the reason for talking or the problem or the need that you're responding to. So that's going to be the first thing. Then I try to think about like how much time should this be. So for introducing myself and sharing the topic of creativity, I think that should be about 5%. So if I have a 10-minute presentation, that is 30 seconds. But in my case, I have a 75-minute presentation, so it's 3.75 seconds out of 75 minutes. Or sorry, 3.75 minutes. Okay. I would also think that this should just be 5%, so these numbers stay the same. Okay, so then these are pretty standard. So anytime I start a presentation, I pretty much introduce myself, tell my topic, I give an outline of what's to come. Like first I'm going to do this, then that, and I tell people like what's the need for my presentation, what's the problem. So for this presentation, it's that sometimes brainstorming, when we talk about brainstorming, we forgot to talk about debate and criticism. So that's kind of my hook, right? Then I'm going to be talking about this recent group creativity research, apparently. So, and I need to talk about the key implications for tutors and writers. So here I'm going to do, that's going to be in the body. So I'm going to say recent research. So I'll need to have some slides that share some of the research, and I'll need to tell people what that research is. And I need to talk about implications for tutors and writers. I think the recent research, that's kind of like a big part of the presentation, but you don't want to just overwhelm people with research, so maybe 10%. And then implications, I'm thinking probably 5%. Because your implications might not be you might not have that many. It might just be like one or two really important things that you want your viewers or your listeners to take away. So let's see, a couple of things here. That's going to be 1 minute out of a 10-minute presentation, or it's going to be 7.5 minutes out of a 75-minute presentation. Okay, and then this would be, again, 30 seconds, or 3.75. Keep doing this. Okay. I also want to add a note. So when I'm sharing the recent research, or actually when I'm sharing this problem, I want to share some of the research about how, like, I need to basically say if I'm claiming that dissent is overlooked, I need to tell people why I believe that, and I know I need to pull in a book about higher ed that I recently read about the need for challenge and free speech in the classroom. Okay. So that's not currently in my presentation, so I need to do that. For implications, I'll be talking about, like, for example, explain benefits for tutoring sessions, etc. Okay, so then the other part of my body is that I want to do some group brainstorming activities. And that's going to take quite a while. So at this point, I've spent about 20 minutes in my presentation. That's for my 75-minute presentation. So, and I want to save, I actually already know that I want to do 5% of my presentation will be Q&A. So that would be 30 seconds of 10 minutes. And then I would make it, let's see, 15 minutes. I'm sorry. This is all wrong. And then it's going to be, let's see, 15 minutes out of 75 minutes. No, is that 5%? That's 20%. So I'm going to go back to my notes and update that. That's 20%, right? Which would be 2 minutes, right? Which makes more sense for Q&A. Okay, so for the group brainstorming activities, so if I've currently used 35 minutes, then I have an extra 25 minutes. So I'm just going to write that down. 25 minutes. I'm going to do activity 1 and activity 2. And so each of them are going to be for about 12 minutes, we'll say. Okay. So now I have kind of an outline of what I need to do with my presentation.